1.
Good morning, everybody. It is Monday, July 15th. Welcome to the Transportation and Environment Committee. We have one item on today's agenda with a number of speakers who are going to talk about their thoughts on the building energy performance standards regulations that this committee has been working on for the last number of months. This conversation is actually the fourth discussion we are having on this issue. We started back in January when we had a conversation with our healthcare providers and our hospitals about building energy performance standards. The next meeting was in February, and that was with our life sciences community. And then our third meeting was in March, and that was with our affordable housing providers and developers. And so today's conversation is a continuation of that. It is with our multi-family housing partners, both our commercial developers and managers, and also our HOAs, of which we have many here in the community, represented primarily by the my two colleagues here on the council. The Common Ownership community is well represented on the T&E committee. The reason, again, we're having this discussion is because so many of you have reached out to us, both those who build and support our multifamily housing, but also the residents. And I know we have been going to many of the HOAs and buildings throughout the community and figured it would be beneficial for everybody to hear your perspective, and that's why we've invited you here today. Just as a backdrop, back in 2017, Montgomery County declared a climate emergency. And as part of that declaration, we committed ourselves to reducing and eliminating carbon emissions here in Montgomery County. We committed ourselves to an 80% reduction of carbon emissions by 2027 and a full elimination of carbon emissions by 2035. That is our commitment. And in order to do that, we need to reduce our carbon emissions both in our transportation sector, which takes up 42% of our carbon emissions, and our infrastructure, our buildings, which emit 52% of our carbon emissions. And now today, with another heat emergency that is upon us, 110 degrees, or so they say, we recognize the climate emergency is real and that we all have to work together to make sure that we preserve our planet and our community for our children and grandchildren. But the road to progress is not always easy, and that's why we're having these tough conversations. So with that, there are two panels that we're going to have today. Let's start with our first panel, which are members of our HOA and common ownership communities. So I'm going to invite a number of folks up, and if you can sit in order so we can go through that order. Beryl Bletcher, who's a board member with the Willoughby of Chevy Chase Condominium. Then Jean Andergregg of Grosvenor Park, Joe Butcherer of the Elizabeth in Friendship Heights, Henry Jordan of Leisure World, and Miriam Hamilton of the Promenade. And then because of time, if Adam Landsman is here, I'd like to invite him up. Adam? Yeah, there's one more seat left for you. So that after this panel, you can leave as was requested. Thank you. Yes. Fantastic. Thank you all. There are buttons in front of you for when you speak, and I think everyone's been asked to limit their comments to 3 to 5 minutes. And Ms. Bletcher, we're going to start with you.
I'm Beryl Blecker. Chair Glass and committee members Stewart and Balcom, I want to express my appreciation for having this opportunity to share concerns over Montgomery County's proposed BEPS regulations and their impact on my condominium. I am here today representing the BEPS committee of the Willoughby. I want to emphasize that we believe climate change is a critical challenge, so we welcome the county's attention to this issue. The Willoughby, located in Friendship Heights and built in 1968, is an 815-unit, 24-story condominium that totals over 1 million square feet. Today, it is home to a diverse community, including retirees, many of whom are on fixed incomes, first-time homeowners, and working families, many with children. Residents choose to live in the building because it is located in a walkable community with access to public transportation, parks, restaurants, doctors, and grocery stores. Many residents do not even own cars. The building's age presents substantial challenges to improving its energy performance. For example, the exterior design incorporates windows that are not replaceable without rebuilding the facade. In examining residential energy performance, it would be fair to consider the Willoughby an 815 single-family homes stacked vertically. This concept is crucial when you evaluate how energy performance in homes is being regulated. Single-family homeowners are not being required to make any improvements, yet owners of condominium units are being required to meet an extremely stringent EUI standard of 37. To say that this target is one of the most stringent in the regulation is an understatement. According to the county's own study, this target for multifamily properties represents an over 40% reduction on on-site EUI versus 2019 medians. By comparison, office buildings are asked to reduce their consumption by only 12.7%. And medical office buildings a mere 4.1% over the same time period. According to the EPA, the national median for multifamily buildings is 57, yet the regulation is mandating a reduction to 37, approximately one-third less than the national average. To put this in perspective, if the Willoughby were to set a target of becoming Energy Star certified, a nationwide certification for the most energy-efficient buildings, we would only be required to achieve an on-site EUI of approximately 50. And from this lofty Energy Star baseline, we would still need to reduce consumption by 26% to reach the county's aggressive multifamily target. So how would buildings like ours meet this 40% reduction? Today, energy use for lighting is only about 8% of typical residential energy use. Home computers increased to 33% from 2012 to 2018, and that was before the era of widespread telework. This means that the only major areas left to increase efficiency are HVAC, representing approximately 40% of total building consumption, and water heating, another 18%. To achieve the county's goal, we would have to make a nearly 70% reduction in HVAC and water heating consumption, a feat which is not possible given today's technologies. In sum, there are three things that we hope you can do to help your constituents. First and foremost, adjust the goals. In calculating the 10-year payback for building performance improvement plans, interest payments on loans to finance the project should be included, and any penalties, which are artificially created costs, should be excluded. Next, we ask that the EUI targets for multifamily properties be modified to more reasonable levels, especially for those older properties where energy improvements are more difficult and expensive. As the rollout of state and county regulations have been delayed, we ask that the deadlines in the regulations be extended to compensate for the delays so that we will have a minimum of 7 years to comply with the interim requirements and 12 to 14 to comply with final targets. Second, significantly increase financial support. We appreciate the county's efforts to provide financial and technical assistance through the Green Bank. We are working with them now. However, it is important to keep in mind that the costs of any improvements will ultimately be borne by our condo owners. We want to point out that common ownership communities have not historically qualified for affordable housing grants and federal and state incentives. And eligibility for the benefits of the green energy tax provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act is uncertain for condo and co-op owners. Even Montgomery County's property tax credit for energy efficiency in existing buildings would likely only apply to our common area tax rather than to condo owners' property taxes. With many owners living on fixed incomes, covering their share of the financial costs of the required improvements would present an unbearable burden. It will also make the building unaffordable for first-time homebuyers. So we urge you to drastically increase financial support available through incentives, tax subsidies, and specific common ownership community improvement grant structures. Third, support us in outreach with the state. Because of the high cost of retrofitting existing buildings for BEPS, we need your engagement with the state, for which the presently planned goals of complete electrification are unobtainable, and the presently planned fines could be catastrophic. At an absolute minimum, the state needs to modify its multifamily EUI target, develop negotiable alternative compliance pathway as the county did with building performance improvement plans, and allow buildings greater flexibility in meeting standards through extended timelines, special exemptions, and other means possible. In closing, we would like to recognize the support that the county's Department of Environmental Protection and Green Bank teams have demonstrated, and I want to thank the chair's office team who have always been responsive and helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blecker, and thank you for your neighbors who are joining us here and the entire Friendship Heights community. Next, Ms. Anderberg.
My name is Jean Anderegg, President of the Board of Directors for Grosvenor Park 3 condominium, a 1960s gas-heated high-rise with 413 units. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to share with you our findings on the feasibility of GP3 meeting the county's climate emergency goals. An environmentally conscious community, GP3 has been reducing its energy use over the years as we maintain the building. We have, for example, replaced old boilers and other equipment with high-efficiency models, among many other measures designed to curtail energy consumption. As a result, in 2022, we had a 52.4 EUI and ranked in the 89th percentile for energy efficiency in EPA ratings. We understand the urgency of reducing energy use and support the county's goals. Since most of our remaining options for improving energy efficiency involve our electrical systems, we hired, with financial support from Green Bank, thank you, Scott, Prime Partners Engineering, to study our current electrical capacity and the feasibility of electrifying services that now run on gas. Their report found that we have no realistic options for meeting the county requirements. Specifically, PPE looked at 3 different approaches to reducing our reliance on fossil fuels. The greatest impact would come from replacing gas boilers with electric ones. However, the difficulties in doing this in our building are virtually insurmountable. The preferred replacement would require quadrupling our electrical capacity, an upgrade so costly that PPE eliminated it as a reasonable option. An alternative would require a less substantial increase in electrical capacity, but cost at least $8 million and involve installing 12 boilers in a space the size of a tennis court, space that is not available in our building. A last option, not covered in the PPE report, would use a combination of electric boilers, heat pumps, and other equipment. This would entail new plumbing as well as electrical systems and major renovations to walls and other infrastructure. We would essentially be gutting the building at unfathomable expense and displacing residents for an unknown number of months, 6, maybe 10, a year. The ultimate cost would likely exceed the value of the building. We would also have to increase our electrical capacity for a second plan of action studied by PPE, converting gas stoves to electric ones. This upgrade would cost between $5 and $8 million and would displace residents for up to 4 weeks. After this expense and disruption, we would still fall far short of the county requirements given our continued reliance on gas for heat and hot water. Lastly, PPE looked at how we might electrify laundry room clothes dryers that now run on gas. This would involve less expense, around $1 million, but the same disruption for residents as I just described above. Again, the impact on our progress in meeting the energy goals would be minimal. In short, since we cannot electrify our heating hot water systems, we have no means of meeting the county's requirements with current technology. These findings will apply to many other high-rise condos of our vintage, including our sister buildings, GP1, Grosvenor Park 1 and 2, who together have 821 units and who have endorsed my statement. We urge you, therefore, to adopt the following measures. 1, create a good faith safe harbor for properties that have taken reasonable steps to reduce their EUIs. 2, create a clear formula for how financial hardship will be calculated when determining exemptions from requirements. 3, specify that existing systems need not be replaced before the end of their useful lives. 4, exempt gas ranges, ovens, and cooktops from the BEPS calculus and do not require replacing them with electric ones. And 5, as Beryl suggested, provide financial support from tax resources to even out the burden of these requirements. Thank you again for your attention and for this opportunity to share the views of Grosvenor Park 3. The viability of affordable housing in Montgomery County is really at stake in deliberations on these regulations. Please see the PPE report and other supporting documents that were sent in a separate email to the committee for more information. And again, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank the Green Bank for their wonderful support.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Anderegg. Mr. Butcher.
Thank you to the committee and good morning, and also thanks to Member Glass or Chair Glass for visiting us in the village of Friendship Heights about 2 weeks ago. It was very informative. I live at 4601 North Park Avenue in Chevy Chase, also known as the Elizabeth Condominium Association. I also serve as the chair of the Village of Friendship Heights Community Advisory Committee. I want to state that it is in our building's best interest to become more energy efficient, and in our 30-year reserve plan, we are working towards that goal. Financially, it's important, and environmentally, it's important. My comments are both specific to my building as well as the other adjoining high-rise buildings in the village, and I suggest others in the county. I have already submitted notes on this topic. I will not deal with legally or overly technical details. Rather, I much prefer to talk about the reality of condominium associations. I hope that there will be some reconsideration of the process and the guidelines regarding the final form of the energy efficiency standards, as well as some coordination with the state, which has not existed to this point. There needs to be an understanding of the considerable cost to owners of condominiums approaching or at 50 years of age. In condominiums, we do not have the ability to turn on initiatives with a few years to go, nor can we raise large sums of money. Everything we do must follow a process based on our particular bylaws, state and county statute. Each association is different. Some just do not have the electrical capacity to fully electrify. Some use gas to fire boilers, as ours does. There is simply no alternative given the size of the structures and the existing area that we comprise. Some have different governing documents that restrict what can actually be done. Under the guidelines, our energy consumption would be equal to a 20-door building completed in 2020. That is not feasible or reasonable. Add to this the fact that as a condominium where electricity, heat, and hot water are common elements, the opportunity to control and submeter is not possible in our bylaws. Therefore, our hands are kind of tied. Consideration needs to be provided for age, construction merit, size, and our governing documents, as other studies have shown, which are mandated by state and county law. We are required by statute and our bylaws to provide for the regular maintenance and upgrade of our structure and operating systems. We currently have a 30-year reserve study that we fund with planned upgrades for elevators, boilers, electrical panels, and other items. These are funded by fees paid by association members. These projects, which cost in the millions of dollars, and you've heard reference earlier, are planned over long periods of time. The regulation would add in a short period of time another burden on owners and renters, as higher fees or special assessment costs would need to be passed along. And even in these areas, there are guidelines that we cannot exceed. For many, this would make living in our buildings unaffordable for many. Things like rebates, tax credits, and subsidies are offered. However, in our particular structure, we cannot take advantage of tax credits. We need to rely on cash to fund vendors. Hence, we still need to raise funds to pay for these mandated programs. We need discounted access to expertise as well as materials. We have used the Green Bank extensively for access to engineering support for our planning needs, and we've been very, very pleased. We received several suggestions to update our aged infrastructure, inclusive of more efficient gas-powered boilers. We do not have the capacity to fully electrify, cogeneration, and solar. We're waiting for those final study results to come back so we can go to bid. As part of our reserve planning, we're already evaluating options before BEPS came along. Even despite this considerable effort, which will reduce our footprint and result in lower energy costs, the current plan still has us paying a fine, as we will not be able to meet the generic standards. Several engineers provided by County Access have told us we will never get to the median aspirational standard. The definition of a median is half above, half below, so we are already planning for half to fail. From a business perspective, that should raise questions about the planning and the coordination thus far. Every business understands that there will be variation. Condominium associations are, in essence, businesses. Please reconsider the proposed guidelines, recognizing the variability in building types contained in the broad classifications provided and the needed funding support that makes sense for our structures. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Butcher. Next, Mr. Jordan.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Glass, for visiting our community the other week. I'm Henry Jordan, a member of the Board of Directors of the Leisure World Community Corporation. I come here today to bring to your attention several serious issues that will prevent a significant part of the leisure world from meeting the requirements of the county's proposed regulation for building energy benchmarking and performance standards. Leisure World is a 55-plus adult community in Silver Spring on 610 acres and 5,660 individually owned residential units. These entities are governed by 29 separate associations. Each has its own bylaws, controls its own budget, and is governed by a board of directors elected by the residents. Within Leisure World, 13 condominium associations with 32 buildings with over 3,432 residential units are subject to the proposed regulations. These were constructed over a 50-year period. The average resident age of the community is 78 years old. Many are elderly and on fixed incomes. Our owners are seeking to age in place. The community was originally built under a master meter system for electricity and water. Currently, all recreational and the infrastructure of the community, as well as 2,413 residential units, are under a single master meter. They're all under 1 meter for almost the whole community. Leisure World supports the county's goal to address climate change, but we face several substantial issues to meet the proposed requirements. These challenges involve two basic issues, which, given the time constraints, I will briefly address. First, 9 of the 32 buildings subject to the proposed regulations are on the master meter system and are not sub-metered. These buildings were built 46 years ago and are all-electric buildings. The lack of metering prevents determination of the energy use for each building needed for benchmarking. Installing meters in these old buildings will be expensive, as the electrical infrastructure is not straightforward. The residential units and common areas of these 9 buildings are all electric. Given the design of the building, there is little that can be done to conserve utility utilization without major infrastructure and structural changes that will be a substantial cost to the residents. Second, for the other 23 buildings, the age and the design of the buildings result in the need for changes to upgrade their infrastructure, including wiring to accommodate common HVAC, heat pumps, purchasing equipment to replace gas furnaces, stoves, and hot water heaters. The costs will be substantial. It is not clear that the building infrastructure is sufficiently sized to pull into the buildings the necessary increased electricity. For some of the older buildings, there will be significant electrical supply issues. Complicating the challenge is the fact that the improvements will be necessary not only for the equipment in the common areas under the control of the condominium boards, but also the equipment in the individual units owned by the unit owners. The cost for unit owners to upgrade their heating systems, eliminate gas appliances are no different than similar costs for single-family homes. It is inherent unfairness to include units in high-rise buildings that are inherently more efficient due to packaging and stacking of units in a single building and exempt single-unit dwellings that are exposed on all sides to the environment. It is also noteworthy that all 32 buildings and condominium boards do not have the authority under current bylaws to direct individual unit owners to modify their systems and appliances. Changing bylaws requires the approval of all unit owners who may not agree that the changes will substantially increase the cost, given the unit owners already struggling to fund reserves to meet existing obligations, as the other panel members have already stated. Leisure World respectfully requests that the regulations be modified to provide alternative waivers, such as grandfathering all electric residential buildings over 40 years old on a master meter system. Number two, limit compliance with the standards to only the common areas of condominium buildings and exempt areas owned by individual unit owners similar to standalone residents. Number three, grandfather current HVAC and gas utilization equipment with a mandate to improve or change the equipment only when the existing units come up for replacement, assuming that the building infrastructure is able to support the new equipment. These recommendations were more fully explained on a March 11, 2024 letter and a July 5th email that Patricia Hempstead, the chair of the Leisure World Community Corporation, sent to the committee. I thank you for your attention and we're pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Mr. Jordan. Next, Ms. Hamilton.
Good morning, and thank you for this opportunity to comment. My name is Miriam Hamilton, and I'm a board member at the Promenade Towers, which is a 1,071-unit, 51-year-old co-op in Bethesda. I'm also an engineer and former professor who is perplexed by contradictory compliance goals in the regulations that complicate strategizing investments for our corporation. Our future at the Promenade will entail significant system replacements and repairs that rely solely upon shareholder fee increases for financing, with BEPS regulations layering onto an already costly enterprise. We have adjusted our reserves planning to prioritize conserving energy as the prime factor in selecting systems for repair or replacement over time. However, to meet the 2035 zero net carbon target, we will be compelled to replace our natural gas, boiler, HVAC, and hot water systems with a centralized heat pump solution and our gas stoves with electric versions, and to do so in a way that satisfies both current needs and future performance standards. Now, we observe that some county buildings have gambled on the notion that a zero net carbon target and an associated radically low site EUI standard are jointly inconsistent, and have opted instead in the near term to replace old boilers with new, more efficient ones. Since boilers for large buildings cost several $1 million and possess lifespans of 25 years and longer, in the event that the 2035 targets hold, an even costlier investment is scheduled to appear in 11 years at a point early in a boiler's life if purchased today. Moreover, according to the Apartment and Office Building Association's January 2024 report, HVAC replacement for an average Maryland building can cost $16 per square foot, which for us would be $22 million. And should we accommodate electric stoves and an electrical HVAC, we would also be required to substantially upgrade our electrical system at costs greater than $10 million, with vast accompanying increases to our site EUI. Purchasing new boilers today that must be discarded by 2035 is not a sound policy, nor is revamping a centralized HVAC today at $32 million plus when the cost is currently beyond our means. We mention these contradictory BEPS regulation elements because they are simultaneously unachievable, and because unless we are willing to defy laws of physics or rely upon radical advances in technology that do not exist today, we cannot envision a clear path forward. Note that the more reasonable energy efficient and midpoint targets referred to on the county BEPS website exist as alternatives. Under either of these targets, buildings permitted to emit modest quantities of carbon equivalents and slightly higher EUI volumes will successfully wean themselves from natural gas while exploiting opportunities to lower EUI through commissioning and implementation of less costly ECMs, such as insulating unit interiors, pipes, or windows, installing programmable thermostats and LEDs, and other measures. And while we ponder this flurry of potential trajectories and options, we find ourselves engaged in games of chess with you, anticipating the next county and state moves with the faint hope that you and we have each chosen correctly. We embrace complying with regulations to reduce greenhouse gases and overall energy consumption as the right path forward for saving the planet, and we therefore strongly urge the county to remediate inconsistencies in the law by enacting joint workable targets that can be met. We similarly urge the Maryland Department of Energy, as part of its ongoing review process, to levy financially feasible targets with alternative compliance paths that will take the place of imposing fines, and to incorporate both into the next Maryland BEPS law. I thank you again for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. And last speaker on this panel is Mr. Landsman.
Councilmember Glass, members of the committee, thank you so much for convening this session. My name is Adam Landsman. I'm the president of Pulse IQ, based in Tacoma Park, District 4. And this year, our company is providing benchmarking and energy efficiency services to over 500 properties comprising more than 50 million square feet of real estate in both Montgomery County and Washington, D.C. We are also proudly service providers with the Montgomery County Green Bank's Technical Assistance Program, and we are members of the Community Association Institute, representing the condominium industry, as well as AOBA. Prior to leading Pulse IQ, I spent over 10 years as a portfolio manager and vice president for a leading local property management firm specializing in common ownership communities. I'm also a member of the Montgomery County Building Performance Improvement Board and the Maryland Clean Energy Center Advisory Board. I've spent my entire career at the intersection of multifamily real estate and energy efficiency, and I've seen firsthand that incentives alone are necessary but not sufficient to spur property owners to act. Mandatory compliance-based programs like BEPS are essential. Now, the policy rationale for BEPS is very clear. The typical building in the U.S. wastes about a third of the energy that it consumes. And as a nation, our buildings waste a total of 11.4 quadrillion, that's quadrillion with a Q, BTUs of energy every year. To put that in perspective, if the waste, just the waste from our buildings was its own country, we would be the 9th highest energy consuming nation on earth, about equal to the total energy consumption of Saudi Arabia, and we would consume, just our waste, more energy than the bottom 128 nations on earth combined. We can do better, we must do better. Now, property owners and managers may and certainly will complain about the regulatory burden of BEPS. I can tell you that in our experience, every single property that we've worked with has the potential to improve, and the vast majority of properties have a cash flow positive way to do this. In other words, more often than not, energy efficiency is just good business. For the rare cases of actual technical or economic infeasibility, the county BEPS law already provides for a customized building performance improvement plan that will give condominiums and even the most financially underperforming properties a workable path forward. This would certainly include each of the condominiums that we've heard represented here today. Now, The journey toward energy efficiency starts with benchmarking. This exercise helps properties understand where they are today relative to where they need to go. And having benchmarked hundreds of properties in multiple jurisdictions this year, I do want to call out that we have found Montgomery County's DEP to be the most responsive and supportive and, above all, reasonable regulatory agency that we interact with. Our clients' data also shows that most properties are already at or above or very near to the site EUI standards proposed by DEP, including most of Leisure World, which we are benchmarking almost all of. For the small percentage that are not, inaction creates a series of negative economic and environmental externalities, but this is a problem that BEPS can solve for the benefit of property owners, residents, and the broader community. I certainly do want to also acknowledge the technical challenge faced by all the condominiums represented here today. I know them all very well, and that's something I'd like to talk to you all about as a separate matter, because I think there are solutions that have not been discussed that could be considered. Lastly, I want to speak to the benefit of BEPS for local businesses like Pulse IQ. BEPS has had a direct and positive impact on the growth of our company. We're creating local jobs. We're attracting smart and talented people to move to our county. And we're also going to be there to support our clients for many years to come, because energy efficiency isn't inherently a technical problem or an economic problem, it's a human problem. And as we help our clients along their journey from energy efficiency, from benchmarking to energy audits to implementing projects, we expect to continue to grow our business for many years to come. I want to thank you again for seeking input from a broad spectrum of the community. I hope that my testimony is valuable to you as policymakers, and I'm always available to answer any questions you have, particularly related to the governance and operations of condominiums, where I have particular special expertise. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Landsman, for your testimony and that information. We are a data-driven committee, and so information like that is incredibly helpful, and to know your partnership with the Green Bank and the DC region is much appreciated. I have spoken with all of you who are here and have provided testimony because you've reached out to me. In many instances, you asked me to come to your communities, which I did, and the concerns, expectations that you shared, I thought were important enough to share with my colleagues, which is why you've been invited. So now I'd like to open it up for comments from my colleagues. Given many of you are in District 4, I'll turn it over to the District Council Member, District 4, Vice President Stewart.
Thank you, Chair Glass, for that. I think thank you all for coming today. We've been communicating with many of you as you're in District 4. One of the questions I wanted to pick up from what Mr. Landsman said, and I hear the struggles and the work that you all are doing, but going to the building performance improvement plans. And, you know, we heard from some of the other panels why some of the things they would like to see changed in that. We've also heard from DEP that one of their goals is to have flexibility to work with buildings, in your case, condo owners, to meet these goals. And so I don't know if anyone in particular, but just what you all, when you look at BEPS and the regulations, why these building performance plans are not sort of one part of the solution to build flexibility for your unique circumstances, because I hear the unique circumstances that each of you are facing and the obstacles. So I don't know if...
I think the real question, I mean, it's an obvious and useful strategy for communicating with buildings such as ours. The question that we have really is how it's going to be implemented. We would like, as Miriam suggested, much greater clarity on exactly how this is going to work and what the requirements are going to be. A number of us have said, we have elaborate planning already. As our systems come up for review, we invest our own time and energy into trying to figure out how we can improve. This is just always a factor as we make decisions in our building and in other buildings. The question is the timeline on that, as we asked, not requiring us to make substantial investments when we have already made substantial investments, with the goal of improving energy efficiency. I'll cite our boilers, which we replaced just a few years ago with high-efficiency boilers. So I think it's really a question of how this vehicle will be used in a way that recognizes the very substantial barriers that we face.
I'd like to emphasize that one of the concerns we have is being faced with two different sets of goals, the state and the county. And the county has been more flexible than the state. And yet before you start to make investments in something to meet the county's goals, they may not meet the state's. And in the case of the state right now, it's all penalties, it's fines. So we need a clear, and Montgomery County is the only county in the state that has created BEPS regulations. We need some consistency, some conformity between the two so we are clear on what we are meeting. Right now, we know it is impossible for buildings like ours to meet the state's goals. You've heard all the reasons why all electrification just won't work for buildings that were built with gas. And my building, like others, we don't have metering. We don't even separate the common areas. That's one energy bill for the entire building. We can't replace the whole system. One thing that somebody touched on, but I want you to keep in mind, is the disruption in the lives of all the residents. People that would have to vacate their homes, people that could not stay there while work is done. If they have to replace our windows or our HVAC systems, which are convectors built into the facade, people cannot live there while that's done. You'd have them moved out of their homes for months at a time to be able to do that in tiers, etc. So we need some conformity. We need more time to come up with a solution once we know what we can do. And we need an understanding of what is possible in buildings that are 60 years old, that don't have the space, that weren't designed for this. That isn't being taken into consideration in any of these regulations.
I think all the comments here that have been made are valid, but if you have an aging community in a residential building, right, your building has reserves and you're in 20-year or 30-year cycles, you've done the repairs, you've done it, and now regulations come up, and you don't have the reserves to go and do the things within the new timeframes. If you allow for obsolescence, okay, you just put new equipment in your building, okay, that'll die in 20, 30 years, so you put the reserves in to do it. But to follow the county's plan that in so many years you have to do that to meet the goals, there isn't enough funds, and if you have an aging population on Social Security and whatnot, they don't want to spend money in doing anything, and their life cycle is they won't be living here when you have to do it. So we're saying is you got to allow for obsolescence and see is, okay, if it's going to have obsolescence, you know it's going to fail in 20 years, you put the money into it, you build up your reserves. But then you have to also add in the infrastructure, and in older buildings, the infrastructure may not be there. To put heat pump in certain units, there's just not enough real estate in certain units to do it, like other people says. Individual people have gas stoves and gas heat. They just replaced their units because it was 20 years old. You can't ask them to go replace it within 10 years to meet the goals. So there's an aging factor, and it's up to the residents to fund it. And they have to fund it in two areas. One in the common areas where a board of director has control. But there's no legal thing to say you got to be able to tell an individual unit owner you got to get rid of your gas stove and your gas heating. So that's another element that the county has to consider.
On the performance plans, yeah.
Yeah. So, a couple of things, and I can only speak from the perspective of the Elizabeth. So all of our stoves and cooktops are electric, every single one of them. We have in-unit laundry service. All of it is electric. Our air handler units are electric. The only thing that's heated is the hot water pipes that comes from the central boiler. We're planning this year, our plan was to replace our boilers. So the BEPS guidelines offer us the opportunity for a roadmap. So that's a good thing. The challenge is with the changing of the roadmap. If I put in new boilers tomorrow, am I betting for or against myself? And that's a real challenge because the minimum cost is $1 million. And we've worked effectively with the Green Bank using the BEPS guidelines to give us what we think is going to be a reasonable plan, which is going to be a combination of solar, which we've been looking at for years, cogeneration, and a smaller boiler plant. On top of that, we further have reduced our energy consumption by replacing our elevators. They were 50 years old. We've replaced them. They're more efficient. They run faster, and they take less energy. The challenge is, despite doing all of that and trying to strive towards the guidelines, we've been told that and also we have EV charging stations in. We're well ahead of everybody. We've been told we will never, ever, ever be able to meet those standards. And so we're going to be penalized for the best planning we can possibly do.
I'm sorry, can I just, who told you you're never going to meet the standards?
The engineers that we've pulled in from the county resources and the Green Bank.
Okay. If, yeah.
Yeah.
I was, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was done. I just wanted to make sure you didn't have another follow-up question.
No, not for you, no.
I just wanted to throw in one last thing specifically about the plans, and that is to get back to what someone else suggested earlier. I understand why the focus is on large buildings because the savings are so much more obvious. But I also think it's really important that to remember that only one class of citizens in the county is being asked to do all this, make these plans, follow these improvements, and they take time. Just complying with these requirements, simply doing the first analysis of our own energy use, filing those initial EUI reports, takes time. So I guess another issue I just would like to emphasize again is that we represent a very energy-efficient lifestyle. I came here on the metro. I really don't even need a car. We live in buildings that are more energy efficient. Requiring that we do all this while not requiring that other citizens in the county do the same thing, those who live in single-family homes, seems to me inherently unfair. So I really if this is an all-hands-on-deck moment, right? Climate emergency. I urge you to look at all county residents. Everyone should bear the same burden.
I know Mr. Landsman needs to leave soon, and he had experience directly with 2 projects in Tacoma Park. I don't know if there's time to maybe just highlight some of the.
I think you wanted to comment as well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think those 2 projects are something that we spoke about at the Montgomery County Energy Summit.
Yeah.
Those were led by Mike Kane of Era Building Solutions, and he's an excellent technical expert on building electrification, and it's something I recommend you talk to. They looked at the Tacoma Overlook condominium and the apartment buildings next door. They each took fairly different paths. One worked towards sort of high efficiency, and the other worked toward full electrification, solar, cogen, everything else. They both penciled out, but it was dependent on resources. I know I've spoken for more than 15 years about the incentive gap that exists for common ownership communities. They don't have tax bills for their common elements, so there are no tax incentives that they can take advantage of. They can't do property assessed clean energy or PACE because they don't have a property tax bill. So, I do recognize that there is a gap. There's always been a gap, and it's something that we've advocated for solving for a long time. There are resources that these folks need that they can't get that every other type of commercial building can. One thing I wanted to point out, however, was that when we're looking at these economic models of what the future of building energy performance looks like, one thing that I don't think we're taking into account is what the cost of gas is going to do over the next 20, 30 years, right? So the state BEPS target for multifamily, their EUI is a 29. And I agree that that is inherently unworkable. I think that the state set their targets based on a small non-representative data set, And I think that when they do get their first year or two of BEPS reporting starting next year and the following year, they will revise that target. It will probably end up closer to what Montgomery County is proposing. The other thing that the state's proposing is a penalty on basically on any gas burning within the units, within the buildings. So they're looking for net direct zero greenhouse gas emissions, and they're proposing a penalty equal to the social cost of carbon. I did a little math on that. It works out in today's dollars to about $1.40 a therm. So what the state penalty is going to do for gas is going to say, hey, you can burn gas, but if you do, you're effectively going to pay double for it, once to the gas company and once to us. So there's going to be a disincentive. The other thing that the state policy is going to do is effectively push new construction and a lot of existing construction off of gas. And when you look at the Public Service Commission, all the regulatory filings that Washington Gas and others do with the PSC, they're saying over the next 20, 30 years, we expect the cost of gas to escalate at a fairly even rate as it has historically. What they don't say is that there's a little footnote there that says that's if everything stays the same, and we know it's not. So as the number of gas customers decreases and the amount of gas infrastructure that they have to maintain stays the same, the defray of that cost across a lower number of customers is going to increase significantly. Gas costs are going to increase, I think, 5 to 10x over the next 20 or 30 years, certainly more quickly than electricity. So when we're looking at these models of how these investments will perform over time, I think it's important for us to look at how much more and how much more quickly the cost of gas will increase. And I don't know that that is being done. I think it's something we ought to pay more attention to. And the last thing I'll say is that a lot of these condos are constrained by their bylaws. They can make rules, though. Right? You can make a rule, even though that the front door to my condo unit is part of my individual element, the condo can make a rule that says you have to paint it a certain color. Right? Just because I live in a condo doesn't mean I can paint my door green with pink polka dots as much as I want to. That's just a rule. The condo can make a rule that says upon replacement of your individual HVAC unit, you must use this type of efficient equipment. So those are options available to condos. But I do think that there is a policy that the county could push with the state, which regulates condos through the Maryland Condominium Act, that would allow for condominium associations to have a little more control over energy-consuming equipment in the units, and that would give certain types of bylaw amendments a lower threshold for passing, similar to what they've done for banning smoking and other types of issues in condos.
Can I make one?
Can I add something?
I'll turn it back to the chair.
Quickly.
Very quickly. I just want to reiterate a phrase, and that's affordable housing. The county right now is facing an issue over affordable housing. The communities in Tacoma Park, and I'm aware of some of the information on an electrification project that was done at Hampshire Towers. That's an affordable housing residential tower. They received considerable grants. Those grants are not available to all of us as condominiums.
Right, I was talking more about the Overlook, which is a condominium.
Okay.
Yeah, there were two projects. There was Hampshire Towers, which was, you're correct, affordable housing project. But next door is also a condo that I'm very familiar with, the Overlook, which again, each of you have very unique situations, and I fully appreciate that, and looking at how we're going to address those. But given the Pulse IQ and the Greenbank's experience with the Overlook, I have met with some other condo associations and talked to them about those experience with representatives from the Greenbank, and there are some lessons to learn. I think all of you here are already connected with the Greenbank, as you talked about. You have engineering firms that you're looking with. You are further ahead than some folks, which is great in terms of just the work that you've been doing looking at these issues, and we fully appreciate that and understand the obstacles.
So I'm just emphasizing the issue of what is affordable, what's affordable for our residents, and keep in mind that as condominiums, and it was said before, we can't just borrow money, that we need the owners to support that, and I can assure you that is not easy. Just to pass a no smoking bylaw was extraordinarily difficult, and everyone's in favor of that today. But the percentages are very difficult to meet, even with changes in the Condominium Act, et cetera. So if we needed to change a piece of equipment, we need to get all of the owners to agree to that.
It's all complicated. Thank you, Ms. Flecker. Yes.
I just wanted to say that you would have to throw quite a bit of money at the problem if you want us to replace our gas appliances and boilers with electric and then also lower our site EUI. The math does not work. I think that the math that told whoever created these data points that this was possible, we're relying on a kind of a massive technological revolution in the efficiency of heat pumps and the massive embrace of heat pumps, for large buildings that have centralized systems. The math isn't there. I don't think it works. I think to get to full electrification, in some cases is going to be impossible. In other cases, it's going to cost $50 million to revamp a 50-year-old system and make it work.
The term the kids use these days is the math isn't mathing. So says TikTok. But we appreciate all of you coming here, sharing with everybody, because this is on YouTube, not on TikTok. It's on YouTube. You can share it with your communities, but it is important that you all have shared with us your concerns. Each of your buildings, each of your communities is different. Mm-hmm. We hear that. We also hear, and I need to re-up it, we also need the Green Bank to elevate its role and responsibility. There are conversations that have been going on for months now about being able to bond the Green Bank funding so that we can double, triple, quadruple it, and then use that as leverage to help all of our communities go in the direction we all agree we need to go in. It's just a matter of how we do that. So thank you all for I'm sorry, Councilmember Balfour. Sorry. I was looking at the clock. I apologize.
It's the up county.
No.
No, I just wanted to, and I'll have questions as we go along. I just wanted to, just before this panel leaves, to just mention to Ms. Andrig, was a very good point that resonated, that we're asking one segment of our residents to do something that we're not asking others. And I've lived in a townhouse. I've lived in a townhouse, since I've been in the county. And the idea that people who live in multifamily units are already treading a little lighter on the earth. So I appreciate that comment. Thank you.
You got more?
No, I'm good.
Okay, very good. Thank you all for joining us. And we'll have one more panel. Thank you, Mr. Landsman. So next panel, I'll ask you all to sit in the order in which you're introduced. Mr. Brian Onlu, Vice President of Government Affairs for the Apartment and Office Building Association. Mike Lanciano, Director of Sustainability for the Tower Companies. Gunnar Gindry for Commodore Management Company. Rebecca Becker, Vice President of Environment and Climate Adaptation at Equity Residential. And then Kate Rothenberg, Vice President at ESG Avalon Bay Communities. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for listening to our previous panel. You all have been here, been invited today because while a portion of our multifamily units are HOA and common ownership community, the other portion are commercial. And you all help build those and manage those and represent those renters and tenants. And so it's important to hear your impacts, the impacts of this on you as well. So we'll start with Mr. Onlu.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair Glass, members of the committee. Brian Anley with the Apartment and Office Building Association of Metropolitan Washington. AOBA represents approximately 70% of the county's multifamily rental housing stock. We appreciate you allowing us to be here to share the impact that we believe BEPS will have on multifamily housing providers. I shared with you a presentation that should be in your staff packet. I'm going to speak to that presentation. AOBA members understand the value and importance of making energy efficiency improvements to both fight climate change and to improve tenant living conditions. However, the improvements have to make financial sense for both the housing provider and ultimately the tenants. So going to the first slide, multifamily owners are operating on tighter margins than I think you all might expect. And these tighter margins combined with legislative mandates like BEPS and fire safety requirements and other things that are being imposed on multifamily building owners are really making it difficult to both do these improvements and reinvest in new housing supply and also other just general building improvements and adding amenities to communities, for example. On the second slide, I touch on the expected impact of cost compliance for county BEPS. This is one case study that AOBA commissioned by Stephen Winters Associates, but we believe that it's representative of many of the properties that will have to do many of the same improvements. The different measures you see listed there, some may have to do more, some may have to do less. One that is not included in there is domestic hot water electrification, but these are just kind of examples of some of the measures that they'll have to take and what those measures might cost. Noted there on the far right column, payback with incentives, you see a column that says simple payback years, and you see EUL, that means end of useful life. And basically, that's a fancy way of saying these improvements don't pay for themselves with energy savings over the useful life of the improvements. If you sort of multiply, as the previous panel did, the square footage by some typical unit sizes, what you get is costs ranging from about $20,000 to $40,000 per unit. And it's important to note that those costs do not include heavy up, which is needed to increase electrical capacity to the unit and or the property. Moving on to slide 3. This is from the county's own technical report. The county also used Stephen Winters Associates to do its technical report and to give some cost estimates for the cumulative impact that BEPS will have on all building industries. And what you can see there is that the cumulative impact is about $2.4 billion across all building types. That's about $810 million more using the ZNC target than the midpoint target. So 33% higher costs gets you only a 5% GHG emission reduction. We think that is a huge, huge gap. So there are other target standards that they consider that get you fairly good GHG emissions reductions, like the midpoint, for example. It still gets you to 92%. Last I checked, that's still an A. So, we encourage you all to take another look at that. Moving on to the next slide on the BEPS costs for multifamily properties. That's slide 4. Really in slide 4 and 5, these touch on the marginal costs of BEPS improvements. Marginal cost is something that came up during the legislative session, the joint committee hearing that the legislature had on BEPS, where one of the consultants said that over the lifespan of these buildings, they're going to have to replace these systems anyway. So the marginal cost in their estimation was only about 30%. Well, we think those numbers were an extreme lowball. We asked Stephen Winter Associates again to revisit the case studies and look at the marginal cost. And what you see there is the business as usual cost. That's essentially replacing the systems in kind. And then what we're calling the BEPS premium, the increased cost that it would take to comply with BEPS. And so what you're seeing is that for those two case studies, for an affordable mid-rise and an affordable garden-style community, it's going to cost between 58% and close to 70% premium higher cost to comply with BEPS than just if they just replace their systems, again, in kind. Again, these costs do not include heavy up. They also do not include financing costs. And as you heard with the previous panel, a lot of this work can't be done while the tenant is in the unit. So if the tenant has to be moved out, there's time spent the unit being offline that they're not getting income from. So those costs are not being factored in here. And so we expect that the impact of these energy efficiency improvements will be on naturally occurring affordable housing will be anywhere from 10 to 20% in terms of rent increases. And that's if the market can even absorb such high increases. Many parts of the county and for many communities, the market may not even be able to absorb those costs. But let's say they can. Under the county's rent stabilization law, the highest increase you can go above the base is 20% in any given year. So if after factoring in heavy up financing and loss of tenant income, the number you get is higher than 20%, all of that is unrecoverable. And so lastly, I want to touch on another way to meet the county's climate goals that is not currently considered in the BEPS regs, and that's off-site renewable energy allowances. We really believe that this is a missed opportunity. Allowing for off-site renewables will increase faster grid decarbonization. It will strengthen the grid's resiliency. And there's some buildings that just can't put renewable energy systems on their property, either because of their rooftop or they're constrained by their site. So we really believe that off-site renewables should be allowed. What the county is going to say is that the renewable energy market is incredibly complex, and we don't disagree with that, and that they would need to hire additional staff to comply to track the renewable energy market and be able to allow this. And so our ask is that really, well, I should frame it this way. The county's asking our members to invest billions in their property. The least the county can do is, hire additional staff to make it as easy as possible to comply. Lastly, not touched on in my presentation, but something that I think you heard from the previous panel on the need to comply with both county and state BEPS. One of the conversations we've been having at the state level, and that I think there's some openness to in speaking with Chair Corman on this topic, is exempting out Montgomery County from state BEPS. The state, as you all know, has incredible budgetary challenges and staffing and personnel challenges. And so exempting state BEPS would lighten that load for them. Exempting Montgomery County from state BEPS would lighten that load for MDE. And so I think there's a willingness to do that, but the county needs to be at the table pushing for and asking for that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onlu. Appreciate that. Mr. Lanciano.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Glass, for allowing me the chance to speak today regarding the building energy performance standards. My name is Luke Lanciano, and I currently serve as the Director of Sustainability at the Tower Companies, a local real estate firm that's been in business since 1947. We've developed, own, and operate millions of square feet in the region, commercial buildings, residential buildings, the big residential hub in Silver Spring known as the Blairs, about 1,400 apartments over there. One of our corporate goals is to reduce our impact on the natural environment. We've worked for decades on this topic. About 85% of our buildings are Energy Star certified, meaning they are more efficient than 75% of like buildings nationally. 95% of our portfolio is LEED certified. And our benchmarking efforts have gone back well before there were benchmarking requirements. We're very familiar with, the need for energy efficiency, and we have climate commitments with national organizations such as the Urban Land Institute, their net zero imperative, the Department of Energy's Better Buildings and Better Climate Challenges, and have been working on this subject for a very long time. My job essentially is to make our buildings more energy efficient and to really reduce the emissions impact of those buildings down to zero and to maximize the health, wellness, and connection to the natural world for all of the folks who come into our buildings. And just a little primer on sort of the basics of building energy. Many buildings in the county utilize on-site emissions, sort of scope 1 emissions, typically for heating and hot water. And then the scope 2 emissions are the electric supply that cover everything else. For most buildings that I have seen, and when I've done benchmarking or greenhouse gas emissions reductions, it's the scope 2 emissions, that electric off-site emissions impact that is substantially higher than the scope 1 emissions. So that, there's about half a pound of off-site CO2 emissions from every kilowatt hour that's coming into the county or coming into the lights right now. So that, Brian touched on it a little bit, is a really key thing to be considering. Onto the bill at hand, there are three key things that I see as problems in the proposed regulations. The first is multifamily buildings as a building type are being unreasonably targeted. They are looking at much more substantial reductions in their energy use. They're allocated, about a third less energy per square foot than office buildings, for example. And these buildings, multifamily buildings, as has been stated several times, they provide basically all of the affordable housing in the county. The second point is that offsite renewables are just not effectively addressed. This is something I have a lot of familiarity with. We buy a lot of offsite renewables. We try to reduce our own emissions impact dramatically through our offsite procurement policies. So I'm happy to talk about that specifically. And then the third point is that the current incentives that are available nowadays are not targeting the same thing that BEPS is targeting. They're just not able to meet some of the buildings where they are to get them to where the county would like them to be. All right. So multifamily buildings, especially older buildings, are much more likely to have central gas heating and hot water systems. And these systems are very difficult to retrofit decades after they were installed. There are space issues, physically not enough space in mechanical rooms for the types of storage systems that you need with heat pumps. Because heat pumps, they tend to be much larger pieces of equipment, or they are frankly slow at heating hot water or heating air. So storage capacity is often a big thing. You need to basically provide auxiliary storage to be able to effectively utilize them in existing distribution systems. Now, despite all of these difficulties, the regulations really hit the multifamily sector hard with very low site EUI targets. These site EUI targets do not match the federal definitions for what a zero emissions building looks like in a couple of ways, but that I think is a particular one that should be looked at increasingly. Now these, doing the actual work itself would be extraordinarily expensive, but I think it's important to note there really isn't the payback for a lot of these projects. You can do LED retrofits, you can switch out, pump systems, VFDs, fairly affordably. There's payback there, but when you're transitioning a gas system over to an electric system, you need substantial grants. Basically a lot of sort of free money to be able to make the math work. And I think that's really the main way that, the project in Tacoma Park has been able to come together. Although I'm watching it, I'm kind of a technical nerd, so I'm curious to see how they do it. And I'd be very interested to see what their end result is after they fully put everything in. So with that, I'd suggest two possible changes. Multifamily buildings could get a less aggressive target, and as Brian alluded to, the emissions impact of that would be fairly minimal, but the cost impact for actual building owners would be dramatic. And I really think it's important to consider that, because the more buildings that are able to move quickly in the coming years and not face the same sort of financial hurdles, the more buildings will become more efficient over time. The second item is, right now, common ownership communities are considered under-resourced under the proposed regulations. I would suggest that be sort of inclusive of all multifamily buildings. The systems are very similar. A lot of the challenges mentioned in the first panel are challenges we face in rental buildings. It's a different governance structure. There's certainly differences in the way they're run, but I think that could potentially make sense and help, with the BEPS process as that gets sort of formalized in the future. Another big thing is the key BEPS metric. It really doesn't account for whether that energy is renewable or clean at all. It basically is just the pure energy divided by the square foot annually. And I think that fundamentally misses, the key point around the need for clean energy. The renewable capacity in the local area is fairly limited. There are not the massive build-outs of renewable projects that really are needed for this whole region and the country as a whole to hit 100% clean electricity within the coming 10, 15 years, as many people have been proposing. And I think one option that the BEPS regulations could address, like Brian was saying, is allowing off-site renewables purchases as one of those compliance measures. On-site solar, and we have nearly a gigawatt of on-site solar at our properties. That is exempted, which is a good thing. It has a very simple exemption. It reduces the site EUI numerator by the amount of solar produced. I would suggest something similar be done for off-site renewable procurement. That can be validated through REC agreements. And that would be an option that could help reduce the off-site impact of these regulations. So finally, the region has been ahead of many of its peers in offering incentives for this type of work for building efficiency. We've made use of many of these incentives from the very early days of LED lights to the very early days of EV stations and solar as well. But unfortunately, the incentive structures out there do not currently support probably two of the biggest things that I think are going to be most costly in the coming years. There are enclosure upgrades that need to be made, basically making a building tighter so that a heat pump system can more effectively and efficiently condition that space. With gas equipment being basically fast at making heat. It has been kind of okay for there to be sort of a leaky envelope because the amount of gas that you're getting, it can appropriately heat the space and be cost effective. That will not be the case in a heat pump world. We're going to need much tighter enclosures. That means new windows, air sealing measures, new insulation. And currently the incentives on offer do not match the costs of those particular measures. So I would recommend that be addressed. Further, there are, actually as an example for the enclosure note, we're looking at new windows across several of our buildings. The cost of that for, say, a high rise might be $4 million. Looking at the available incentives out there, we might be able to get $35,000 to maybe $50,000 total if we're going with the highest efficiency windows we can find. But compared to a $4 million actual cost, that's really a drop in the bucket. If we're looking at two different types of windows, that is not going to be covering the marginal cost of the most efficient piece of equipment we can get. So that's a real challenge. And then besides Empower, the county has the innovative property tax abatement program for energy efficient buildings. We've utilized that in years past for several of our new developments. But one thing I would note is that the existing buildings program really needs a bit more funding. We've run into challenges where we have a series of buildings that have been applied for, approved since about 2020, and we are still in basically a queue waiting for the county budget to open up enough. And I think when we're talking about all these major costs, property tax abatement is a pretty good way to do it for building types like ours. And so the availability of that funding is really critical, but it needs to come at some point, right? It can't be delayed. So fixing those gaps will be a key way for the county to help encourage the energy transition. So thank you for your consideration, and I'm open to any questions that you have.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Lanciano. Mr. Gingery.
Council members, my name is Gunnar Gingrey, and I'm here in my capacity as Senior Vice President of Investment and Operations for Commodore Management, which owns and operates more than 1,200 units of naturally occurring affordable housing in Montgomery County. As a long-standing Rockville-based company developing and managing properties since the 60s, we take pride in providing an affordable housing option to our residents. Many of our tenants have enjoyed stable, well-amenitized, high-quality housing at below-market rents due to our commitment historically to increases at or below the voluntary rent guidelines while they are with us, and substantial reinvestment in property and unit renovations upon turnover, which lately have been exceeding $30,000 a unit. I'm here to address the committee to mitigate what we view as an unintended consequence of the county's BEPS legislation, directly impacting our residents and our community's future. Our residential portfolio consists almost entirely of 60s and 70s vintage garden-style communities. We reinvest capital to maintain the product, but they are older communities. When they were originally built, they were wired for 110 volts, and they do not score particularly well from an EUI standpoint. I'll let others speak to the specifics of calculating efficiency and EUI levels, but I want to highlight for you the real cost of what it will take to turn these communities, which either have split systems, such as gas, forced air, and electric AC, or central boiler systems, to be all electric. A few years ago, we had to completely rewire one of our buildings, so we know what it costs then and how long it takes. We reached out to our contractors for that job and asked them to provide updated cost numbers to that same exact scope. To upgrade the building to 220 to be able to support electric ranges, heat pumps, washer dryers, and water heaters, you're looking at direct hard costs for the appliance and wiring alone of $22,000 a unit. Our communities typically run at or very near 100% occupancy year-round, and it can take months to complete this work. So we are looking to having to displace tenants while building systems are offline, months of lost revenue, permitting costs, PEPCO heavy-up costs, financing costs, labor costs, and construction management costs that on their own can conservatively add up to an additional $25,000 a unit. And that's just assuming 1 year simple interest on the financing we will need to take out to conduct this work. That's nearly $50,000 a unit just to move our communities off of gas. Our communities are subject to the rent stabilization measures this council is preparing to adopt. So we will need to pass this on to the tenants through the capital improvement surcharge, who will not only be forced out of their homes while we conduct this work, but when they return, we will have to explain to them that their monthly rent is going from $1,700 to $1,800 a month, up by an additional $350 a month. That's over 1,200 families in this county who will have to pay an additional $4,200 a year for something that does not improve their quality of life or living spaces. That also equates to an 11-year payback period. That's 11 years we won't be able to renovate units because we won't be able to make a return on that capital. So at some point, either the quality of the housing we provide will deteriorate or this cost becomes unrecoverable. We recognize the need to do something to combat climate change, but this BEPS legislation needs to acknowledge that this is the equivalent of asking us to turn a 60s Buick into a Tesla. I'm imploring this committee and this council to either come up with an exemption for older housing stock or to at least allow for off-site credits to be able to comply. Otherwise, there also comes a point where we must conduct a cost-benefit analysis and make the tough decision that it is a more efficient use of capital to raise our properties and redevelop them into market-rate efficient housing at a much higher price point, effectively displacing the over 1,200 families who rely on us for the housing that we do provide today.
Thank you. I'll note I drive a Chevy Bolt, so there are alternatives. Okay. Ms. Becker.
Good morning. Thanks for the opportunity to have me here. Becky Becker. I work for Equity Residential, and I'm our Vice President of Environmental and Climate Adaptation. So my responsibilities include overseeing our energy team, which is looking at decarbonizing our portfolio across the country, and then looking at BEPS programs in different markets across the country and how we're going to align our capital planning with the requirements that are out there. Equity Residential is an S&P 500 company, an owner of more than 300 market-rate apartment communities in 9 markets. These are mostly coastal markets, and most of them do have either BEPS requirements or other energy efficiency requirements for existing buildings that have us thinking about how we're going to do this. In Montgomery County, we own 7 apartment complexes, and we provide housing for more than 3,000 residents of the county. Nationally, we provide housing for more than 200,000 families. Our properties in Montgomery County are mostly high-rise, so we have some of the challenges that we talked about with off-site renewables. But I want to talk just a little bit about equity sustainability commitments before I get into kind of our experience so far with different BEPS programs. Equity is very committed to sustainability. It's a key driver in our commitment to creating the best apartments for people to live in. And just like Montgomery County, we have ambitious climate goals that we are on board and want to achieve just like you do. They include science-based targets that have us committed to reducing our entire emissions by 30% by 2030, as well as a portfolio-wide energy intensity reduction target of 20%. We're with you on the importance of this project and the big project, but we also know that it has to be done in a way that makes business sense and align with the life cycle of equipment and other things to make sense. So with so many of our assets within jurisdictions that have BEPS regulations, we're several years into our journey in planning our decarbonization of our assets, and we have a really solid understanding of the costs and challenges with decarbonizing multifamily assets, as well as experience with BEPS programs that thoughtfully address climate impact and equity and housing affordability and programs that do not. We have other markets with BEPS regulations with similar climates as what you have here. So DC I'm thinking of, and Denver's somewhat similar. And in those locations, we're pretty far along in our planning. We're past the energy audit phase. We've completed the engineering analysis. We've done project design, and we've bid out the work. So we have real solid costs on what it's going to take to electrify our buildings. And we're looking at, based on today's technology, pricing, and regulations, we're looking at a cost of between $20,000 and $30,000 per apartment unit, depending on the building systems, type of building, high-rise or garden style, and several other factors. Planning for these deep retrofits can take a long time. It can take a few years to get through the energy audit phase, the analysis, the bidding, and then another year or two to actually execute these projects because they are large and intrusive. So you're looking at a lead time of 3 to 5 years at a minimum to be able to execute these. Part of the reason the costs are so high, at least so far that we've seen, is the regulations don't allow for end of life cycle, and they're forcing replacement prior to that point. And so when you're replacing equipment that's 5 years old, it doesn't make sense. We also, as a REIT, the way our tax structure is set up, cannot take advantage of many of the incentives that are out there that are focused on tax credits. So that's a challenge for us in particular in the REIT world. So in addition to the costs, we have a bunch of other impacts as well. There's a real impact to residents of our buildings. In order to cover the capital expenses needed to meet these requirements, owners will need to increase rents. And this can directly conflict with a local focus on housing affordability, and not just on affordable housing, but even on market rate housing. And so a few examples that we've seen over the last couple years in markets we're located. City of Cambridge has a BEPS program in place. And just last year, right prior to final approval of the regulation, they removed multifamily after further review and research, confirmed the negative impact it would have on housing affordability in Cambridge, where that is a huge focus. Seattle, also large focus on equity. And they considered that when developing their BEPS program. And in the end, they allowed for a quite extended deadline for multifamily compliance with the targets versus the rest of the commercial building stock. And so, again, they addressed housing and equity while also working towards meeting the city's climate goals. Utility expenses for residents will definitely, not always, but can increase when a very efficient gas building is converted to electric. And I can assure you that there are very efficient gas-fired buildings that are not in compliance with the current EUI standards. We have one built just a few years ago in Montgomery County that has a EUI of 52. So we will need to do significant work there. This is a building with VRF cooling and very efficient condensing gas boilers. But if we do the work that's needed to meet the EUI targets that are currently set, we're looking at a utility expense increase of up to 60%, and that's for the occupants of those apartments. And then I think a few others have already touched on this. There's real logistical impact and inconvenience to the occupants of our buildings. So unlike office, where we can maybe shift tenants around and put them on a different floor or a different side of the floor while you do this heavy, deep retrofit work, we have people living in our buildings, the whole building, 24/7 all the time. So it's really difficult to get in there and do this type of work, whether it's central systems or in unit, where you're replacing the systems without having them relocate for, a couple days at a minimum, but in some locations, based on the type of work needed, it could be a few months. So real impact to their housing situation. I've checked in with our business folks. I'm not local. I live in Chicago, but I know a lot about the different regulations across the board. And the Montgomery County Rent Control Program, from what I understand, takes effect 23 years after the date of the building was built. And that does also sort of line up with when the end-of-life cycle equipment is needed to be replaced, and also just older buildings that are generally going to need more work to comply. So there will be a challenge with meeting the needs to cover the capital at those buildings based on those rent control restrictions. I've read through the regs. The BEPS option is great that you have that in there. I love that there's at least a discussion point around allowing for flexibility for compliance. What I would ask is that get fleshed out before the rules are final. Like I said, it takes a really long time to plan these projects, and the uncertainty around what our options look like now will make it very difficult to plan for that 2030, 2035 target. And so I think it's really important to provide further clarification, not now, not later, but sooner rather than later. And then the incentives issue. I mean, we've talked about how the REITs can't take advantage of the tax credits, and a lot of the incentives available are through tax credits. A lot of them are also through financing, which isn't something that necessarily helps the larger owners. One thing that we'd like to consider is you currently do have a property tax abatement incentive program available for energy projects. I've taken a look through at that for existing buildings, and I would suggest that in addition to the LEED guidelines that are in there, that it revamped to really be focused to align with the BEPS targets, because LEED doesn't necessarily align with BEPS. And so when I'm looking at the work we're going to do, we're not even thinking about LEED. We're thinking about EUI, we're thinking about electrification. And so if that could be revamped to really absorb some of those costs and allow us to get property tax abatement, that would be super helpful. So in summary, we're really far along. We're further along than most, I think, in our decarbonization journey and with BEPS and understanding these rules. And we strongly recommend that the county consider your focus on equity and housing affordability and the impact of these proposed BEPS regulations as they are on housing affordability, and consider a redraft that addresses that impact and that will allow for extended deadlines for multifamily, better defined alternative options, increased or revised incentives options, and a more attainable EUI target for multifamily.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Becker. And final panelist is Ms. Rothenberg.
Good morning. Thank you, council members, for the opportunity to speak with you today. It's hard to follow up after these great four panelists, but I'll do my best. My name's Katie Rothenberg. I'm the Vice President of Environmental Social Governance with Avalon Bay Communities. We are, alongside Equity Residential, pretty much two of the largest publicly traded REITs in the country, focused solely on multifamily residential. Avalon Bay owns about 300 communities across the country, also in coastal markets, a lot of jurisdictions that have benchmarking or BEPS requirements. So we do have a sense and a flavor of what's going on in different parts of the country across about 90,000 units. In Montgomery County, we have 7 communities and about 2,000 units where we're obviously housing residents in Montgomery County. And we are active developers, so we hope to continue to grow in Montgomery County as well. So I'm here today. Avalon Bay recognizes the impact that buildings have on the environment, right? 40% of global greenhouse gas emissions are coming from the development and operation of buildings. This is why we've been really, I would say, early adopters of sustainability targets and recognizing the impact that that building owners and managers have on the global environment. We were early adopters of science-based targets. So we were one of the first 250 companies in the world to have approved science-based targets, and the first multifamily REIT to do so back in 2019. So we have a goal to reduce emissions, whole building emissions, so scope 1, 2, and 3, so including resident consumption, of 50% against a 2017 baseline. So very aggressive targets. We've been working at this for a long time. And so I share all of that background to say, we're totally bought in with what it is we're all trying to do. There is a climate crisis. We recognize there's a role for everyone to play. But, and even as a group that's been focused on this work, planning and achieving these types of targets is really challenging. So when I think about the many multifamily owners around the county that maybe don't have a staff of people that have this expertise like myself and team members, this is a real challenge. So I'd like to focus on a few topics because I think you've had a lot of great and very specific testimony on a few key points. So I'll keep this short. One thing that is a real challenge for us is getting accurate whole building data. So most multifamily buildings, the residents are paying their utility bills directly. Most of these buildings are not master metered. So I don't actually have visibility into whole building energy consumption but once a year after working with PEPCO or other utility providers around the country to get aggregate whole building data. That data from PEPCO is can be notoriously incorrect. And so without having strong expertise, I would say internal to the company, to be able to push back and understand, wow, that EUI seems a little light, what's going on here, and digging in. Much of the data that building owners are getting as far as this aggregate data is, it's not always correct. And it does take a lot of work, I would say, to be confident in those numbers. And when you're thinking about doing these deep decarbonization projects, like Becky was just talking about, you really need good data, right? You need to have good data to give to the engineer to talk about what are the systems that are going to make sense in your building in order to achieve some of these targets. So I think, that's, I think, an important point. This is something that is an issue across the country. The EPA and DOE are working to push utilities around the country to do a better job of this, but I think there may be an opportunity that the county council can also push here as well. And we've talked a little bit about central versus distributed building systems. In an office building, when you've got one central boiler, you're going in and changing out one piece of equipment. There's a lot to it, but it's still one piece of equipment, typically in one big room. We're talking about 250 individual hot water heaters, right? Most of us are dealing with, most of our properties in Montgomery County are garden style, mid-rise, market rate. But we're talking about individual building systems in every residence unit, which is just inherently, like, the logistics of managing that in a fully occupied building is challenging. And obviously it's a big impact on the residents. We are still working through what the actual cost is going to be for some of these buildings, in part because we're working on trying to get better data to understand how far we need to go and how fast. But from speaking with my peers, not just, Becky, but many peers around the country, we're hearing a lot about that sort of $18,000 to $35,000 a unit, depending again on the age of the building, age of the systems, et cetera, et cetera. But again, these are costs that we can't pass through to our residents. So it's a real sort of split incentive situation without rent increases, which I know, again, goes against a lot of the goals that Montgomery County has as it relates to equity. We appreciate that on-site renewables are provided as a path to helping achieve these targets. We've got about 60 operating on-site solar projects around the country. I do think that, given the limitations of the amount of roof space we may have at some of these buildings, or the pitch and the different things we may be doing, it's challenging to really, I would say, maximize solar sometimes on multifamily projects. So I think the opportunity to open that up to use off-site renewables as a way to both help achieve, green the grid for Maryland, Montgomery County, but also just sort of another tool in all of our toolboxes as we're dealing with, a lot of changing technology, a lot of changing regulations. There's just a lot of moving parts. And so having options that we can use to help support our ability to achieve the targets using off-site renewables, we would welcome that opportunity. As it relates to incentives, again, REITs cannot take advantage of many of the incentives that Montgomery County has been talking about. And so I think cash incentives or property tax abatements have been very valuable in helping to move the needle to absorb some of these costs and help facilitate getting these projects going that, as Becky said, can take many years, not just to plan, but then to execute, because you need to then have 12, you've got to plan for the project, you've got to execute the project, and then you need to wait 12 months to really understand how well the project, if you've achieved your goals. So it does draw out that timeline. And I think, it was commented on earlier, I think on both panels about the BEPS process, providing some more clarity on what that really looks like for those of us that are trying to do long-term planning across a multitude of jurisdictions and a multitude of buildings will be incredibly important to us. And I think in closing, what I would just say, and it was said actually on the previous panel, I think maybe one of you had said it, is sort of, it's those of us that are here today, either on the previous panel or this panel, that are leaders in the space. There's a lot of people that are just trying to understand what this is and how they're going to achieve it. And if we're showing real concerns, and we are folks that are trying to achieve the same types of goals that you are, we appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you today, and the thoughtful nature that you're taking in these listening sessions and seeing how you might adjust either EUI targets or timelines that would allow for a more, I would say, commercially viable solution that will work for all parties.
Thank you for those thoughtful comments, Ms. Rothenberg. Again, appreciate all of your insights. Some of the things that I noted specifically are regarding the off-site renewables. A number of you mentioned that also. And then I was also intrigued by Ms. Becker's comments about the LEED standards and the need to just update and modernize. And I think we can add to our regulatory review, right, what our building codes and other areas of law refer to something that we are no longer really referencing, right? We've moved beyond that to a new level of environmental standards. But so thank you for raising that. I'll turn it over to Councilmember Balcom this time, if she has any comments.
Sure, thank you. And I think every one of us wrote down the lead match with the property tax abatement. So just a couple things. I think Ms. Rothenberg, the point about you clearly are all experts on this, and I really appreciate especially the regional approach of you two. One of my concerns is that you all are experts, you have a lot of knowledge on this. What about the people who haven't even heard that BEPS is coming yet? And I think we're going to have a lot of that in the community. And I wrote myself a note about making sure that my community is more aware of this, because I think we take for granted that everybody knows about BEPS, and so I think that's important. I do have a couple questions about the impact on residents, and I understand that unlike a commercial building where you can move people around or there's some accommodation, this kind of change will have an impact on residents. So how would this conversion be different than a standard end of cycle transition? So if you have a HVAC system that you're going to change because it's been around for 30 years, that's going to have a major impact. Or you're going to update windows. So how would this transition be different than end of cycle transition?
Sure, I can start, and then I think some of the other panelists can elaborate. I think Luke touched on this a little bit. Some of the space requirements to make some of these improvements change. So you may not even be getting the same unit back that you were previously renting because the systems are fundamentally different. I think with some of these system replacements, when you plan, I think as you heard from some of the other panelists, on sort of their normal life cycle replacement, it's on a different timeline. So you might wait for a unit to turn over, or you might wait for some other time to do the actual work. But with BEPS, you have very strict deadlines for when you have to meet and comply with the standards. And so you're having to go in and do the work mid-lease or before unit turnover when it's not vacant. And you're having to do systems that are just, again, fundamentally different from what's there now that will impact the size and even perhaps going as far as to say, if you have a 1 or 2 bedroom unit, now the layout is a little bit different, and now you have a 1 in a den or something like that. So I'd submit to you that those are some of the impacts, but perhaps Luke or Gunnar can elaborate.
In our properties cases, the building doesn't have the infrastructure to support the electrification. You need to rewire the entire building. That means you need to shut down everything, get everybody out, rip up the walls, run all new wiring to be able to support the new. You can't just plug in these appliances and expect them to work. It's deeply invasive. It's going to take months to plan and do, and on top of that, you're going to have to coordinate with PEPCO, who is notoriously hard to pin down. So these are just real challenges that look, electrification, if it was easy as swapping out systems, we'd do it. The reality is especially for our buildings, it's just going to be massively disruptive and costly.
So I echo the points of the prior folks. But a couple examples. Some of our buildings were undergoing riser replacements. So it's a hydronic system. There are convectors in each unit. Either hot water or cold water runs through those lines. After 60 years, pipes, get to a point where they need to be replaced. And doing that work has been enormously disruptive for tenants. We've done everything in our power to try to limit the impacts, but physically you're ripping out a wall in their bedroom, in their living room, in their dining room, from floor to ceiling, and taking out some gross pipe, often doing abatement work around it. Depending on the age of the building, there might be certain environmental issues within those walls. You need to, then, of course, replace all of that, pipe it back in, and install the convector appropriately, and then paint and patch and do all of that. In certain cases, that can take, 3 to 5 days. In other cases, it could take weeks to get the appropriate work done. And of course, during that time, when you're basically taking part of the distribution system out, you have to turn off the cooling to that entire sector of the building, the heating to that entire sector of the building. So we're very limited. Like, we're not going to turn off cooling tomorrow. Like that would be incredibly rude. It's going to be very difficult anyways to maintain cooling in 100-degree weather. But, that's one key part. And it's really the distribution system that gets to be the most invasive, as Gunnar was describing. In a lot of our apartments, we have 60 amp panels. 60 amps is just not enough power to, that's basically the amount of power that you would need for just an electric stove, and maybe one extra convenience outlet. So we would need to upsize that considerably just to electrify the stove. Ultimately, cooking gas is not a dramatic driver of emissions, but that itself would be an enormous project. And that, you would think you just plug in a stove, but you need enough power to do that. So getting the power to each of the units is really important. And a lot of the newer high-efficiency equipment, they just don't operate in the same way. I was mentioning earlier, they cannot provide heating at the speeds that gas equipment can. So within the same footprint, especially, like you cannot find electric equipment that provides the same rated capacity, in any sort of commercially available forum. It's a very difficult challenge. I think a lot of us are trying to solve that right now. There's lots of interesting new technology out there, but with new technology, if you're trying to scale that across hundreds of units, thousands of units, you get very concerned that that new technology might not be successful. So ultimately, figuring out that distribution pathway for how heating and cooling and hot water are going to move throughout the building, that ends up being the biggest disruption point. And just a note we had a town hall about a window project we were looking at. And new windows are one of those things that I think they're usually high up there on what you would think residents would be interested in. If you have very old windows that are leaky, that aren't very good, they don't work very well, replacing them with brand new double paned windows, and we got a lot of pushback about how the project itself would be only like a day or two in each unit. From us, our standpoint, we were like, all right, we're not cutting into the walls. We're not doing some of that work that would be, in our mind, more disruptive. But we're getting a lot of pushback just for those sorts of projects. So I think it's important to note, these are people's homes. They feel very strongly about every inch of them. And so doing those sort of disruptive projects, what it'll effectively mean is they will move and live somewhere else. There might be some hoteling that could be available in larger buildings, but ultimately with these sort of projects, if it takes, weeks and weeks, you have to cover all of your stuff in plastic to avoid dust, it can get extremely invasive.
Thank you. And just one more question. Is there federal funding available for this kind of grant funding available for this kind of transition?
Yeah, actually, a former member of this distinguished council works for the USDOE Loan Program Office. And what we've heard, and I, to be honest, I don't understand what the roadblocks are for the state getting that money, is that the state really has fallen behind other states and jurisdictions in setting up a program and system that works to be able to get that federal money. Without getting too much into it, our members cannot apply directly, to DOE to get that money. One, because as you've heard here today, a lot of these projects are in the early phases of planning, and you're still not quite sure what you're going to do. But even if you did know what you're going to do, you can't just go and apply to the federal government and say, give me some money. And so in this case, you need sort of a bank or some other sort of repository to hold the funds. And for whatever reason, the state has just not done that. So
Thank you. I think I agree with that. Yeah.
Just one quick point on that. A lot of the home energy rebate funding that's coming from the federal government and routed through the state government, it's very much based on a single-family home typology. So, it'd be an individual unit, a heat pump conversion, electrical service upgrade for that individual unit. It's not clear how that's going to work in a multifamily context. There are other, portions of that program that are sort of income based. So doing income verification across, a couple hundred unit buildings, when the resident themselves, they don't really have much of a reason to provide all of their tax documents, all of their income statements. It can be a very invasive process. Having sort of managed the LIHTC compliance at earlier part of my career, I can tell you it is an extremely invasive process, and people generally don't want to do it unless there's an absolute need. So I'm very I'll be interested to see how the state comes out with its funding, but looking at how the feds have created the regulations as of now, I am concerned that it's going to be very, very difficult to access for multifamily.
And I have just one more thing to add about that. A lot of the federal programs that are going to be available, or that are available when the state does bring them in, are related to tax credits. And so for the larger REITs, it's still not something that we can take advantage of the way that they're written. So there does need to be other forms of incentives to help us.
Thank you. I'll maybe add one last thing, which I think kind of tacks onto what Luke was saying, is, where you could switch out an old appliance and put in a much more efficient appliance. If I was able to apply and say, I'm going to replace all of those systems in my whole building at once, let's say, it's a little bit more of a plug and play type of a situation, unless you're doing a gas to electric conversion. But those are rebates, which REITs can take advantage of, but not in the current system, right? Currently, my resident has to apply for that, and they're not going to do that, and I'm not going to ask them to do that. But I have had many conversations internally where if that money was able to flow to us, it would just make the whole process it would make our lives, the people that sit at this table, sort of much easier as we're trying to work with asset management and other parts of the organization to do some of these retrofits and get a little invasive in the residence units. Thank you.
Good questions, Council Vice President Stewart.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure I think my colleague, Councilmember Balcom, in your presentation, because one of the questions I did have was the funding issue, because we are at this moment where there is historic amounts of federal dollars flowing into the states. And, in Maryland, we're on par to get $50 million for electrification out there in the next couple of months, and $168 million in January. How we do that and making sure that all of you can also take advantage of that is going to be really important. And so having this conversation today, and especially hearing about the REITs, I think is important. But I do want to stress that we are talking about the BEPS regulations. And at the same time, the amount of money that we are seeing flowing from the federal government for electrification is something that we are not going to see again. And so really pushing our state and ourselves here in the county to take advantage of that, almost regardless of what we're doing on BEPS, I think needs to be a top priority for us. And I'm just curious, too, about when we talked about the multifamily and what's available to you all through the state DHCD, they do have the multifamily energy efficiency affordability programs that I do know a number of buildings are taking advantage of. And I don't know if you could talk about that today or get back to me, any feedback on how those have been useful or not useful.
So the MIHA program?
Yeah.
I think we always think in acronyms.
No, okay, sorry. I'm looking for the broader public who does it.
So I will say, definitely looked at that funding mechanism. I think, similar to sort of the home energy appliance rebates, I think that's the one that has the income requirements. MIHA does seem to incorporate income requirements as well. And like the logistics of getting 200 people in a building who have been able to live in that building for as long as they've wanted, have not had to provide income as a condition of a new lease, to suddenly provide substantially invasive amounts of income verification is a real challenge. I think there might be some opportunities if potentially the state might need to adjust the way it administers the program to more effectively cover naturally occurring affordable housing. So for example, a rent standard where, somebody at 80% AMI in rental rate, and I think to anybody looking, like that's what affordable housing looks like. It's something that is affordable to the majority of people. But I think the definition of affordable housing is very income restricted. And I think that's a big disconnect. And that naturally occurring affordable market is substantially larger than the sort of covenanted income restricted affordable housing market. So making sure that's fully inclusive and that's clear to all participants, I think would be a really helpful approach.
Thank you.
And I would just add, because I've been in some of the conversations with the county green bank and the state about some of these programs, they are not very well promoted currently, and I know the state is trying to do a better job of promoting those. They've created the Clean Buildings Hub, which is supposed to be eventually a one-stop shop for, all the folks at this table and all other building industry representatives to be able to go and figure out, okay, what state incentives and programs are out there to help fund this work. But the hub is not there yet. It's just one person. This DHCD program, some folks weren't even aware that this existed, and I think they're just starting to get tapped into. And then, I think for our part, AOBA, speaking specifically on behalf of AOBA, we've brought on additional staff to help members navigate that part of the world as well. So, I just would, close by saying that the programs are out there, I think, to your point, and to some of those federal monies that are available, but you have to figure out how to tap into them. And right now, there's just a lot of uncertainty around that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just even having this document of MEA opportunities took forever to get put together. And it is something that we need to continue these conversations. And I think having your feedback about what works, what doesn't work is very important. So I appreciate that. In closing, the one thing I will say, I think someone talked about as we're making these transitions to electrification and what's going to be put on the individual residents and I think if I heard correctly, someone said that it's not really improving their quality of life. And I'm just going to push back and say that when we're having these conversations as well and looking at some of these changes, that this does improve the quality of life for our residents. We need to do it in a way that is smart and works for you and them and our common ownership buildings. But the idea that electrification and moving towards this will improve the lives of people in our community. Not just in the big picture of climate change, but talking about their health, air quality in their homes and other things. So I just, we have a lot of work to do, but I think we also need to acknowledge that the path we're on is to address our climate change, but it's also to improve people's lives and their health. So I just want to thank you all, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you for those comments to my colleagues and to all of you and all the residents as well. So the path forward, just so that we all know, this is the fourth conversation that we have had and specific to this issue. The issue and question of funding and sources of funding has been a recurring theme today and in previous conversations. The next committee session we are having is on September 16th. and it will be about funding. It is specifically a conversation we'll be having with the Green Bank, but given, as Mr. Onlu has noted, not one but two former members of this committee who I served with on the previous council are co-workers once again, this time at the Department of Energy. And they are leading up this work and helping providing funding to states and other jurisdictions, and we can reach out to them and see if this is an appropriate conversation for them to participate in. So that is on September 16th. The following week, we're having a conversation with members of our faith community, because houses of worship are also structures that are captured under this law. Many of them want to move forward and have similar questions as to how to do so. So that will be on September 23rd. And so in the meantime, if there's any more information you all as industry would like to share with us, please do. To the residents, as more people are hearing about it, to the point that we are all aware of, you are on the leading edge of public awareness, and so thank you for your engagement and sharing your talents with us. I want to thank Mr. Levchenko for helping coordinate. If you've been reaching out to Mr. Levchenko or my Chief of Staff, Valeria Carranza, please continue doing so. We welcome your continued insights, thoughts, and information. And for that, we are concluded today, so this committee is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.